A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. This is Sir Mehrab Ali Samejo, and we will continue our chapter number 8, the last portion of the sound. And today we will study about the characteristic of the sound. So the sound that we hear around us is the type of energy made by the vibrating body. Those vibrations which travels the air or any other medium and can be heard when it reaches a person's ear. So basically the sound helps us to communicate with the other persons. For example, we can hear the musical instruments like the drum, flute, guitar and other things. We can hear them. So basically there are the three characteristics of the sound: pitch, loudness and quality. So today we are going to start the first characteristic of the sound. That one is pitch. So characteristics of sound, that's our topic. There are the three characteristics of the sound. One, pitch. Second, quality. And the third one is loudness. So first characteristic that we are going to start, that one is pitch. Pitch of the sound. Pitch is a characteristic of the sound by which a correct note can be distinguished from a grave or the shrill, you may say the acute sound. So we can identify a female and a male voice without seeing them. It is the characteristic of the sound by which you can distinguish between two sounds of the same loudness, same intensity, same amplitude, but of the different frequency. So what is the pitch? Pitch is a characteristic. Pitch is a characteristic of sound which enables us to distinguish between grave and shrill sounds. So basically pitch basically is a characteristic of frequency. But the pitch depends upon the frequency, and the next one is the pitch is affected by the source of the production of the sound waves. Means when you produce the sound in any object by vibrating that, if the vibrations produce in a body produce high frequency, the sound produced by that source will be shrill, and if it is of the low frequency, then the sound will be of grave sound. Low frequency produce the grave sounds, high frequency produce the low. So that means when you talk about the second point, pitch is affected by Pitch is affected by the source of the production of sound, by source of production of sound. Remember one thing, it also depends on the shape of the medium in which it travels. The third point that regarding the pitch, that one is pitch also depends on the shape of medium, on the shape of medium in which it travels. Now then, one more thing, it does not depend on the properties of the medium. That means it depends only on the shape of the medium but doesn't depend on the property of the medium. Pitch, I'm repeating a few things. Pitch is a characteristic of the sound which enables us to distinguish between the grave and the shrill sound. Pitch depends upon the frequency. I already told you, higher the frequency, higher will be the pitch, and the sound will be shrill. Pitch is affected by the source of the production of the sound. Pitch also depends on the shape of the medium in which it travels, but it does not depend on properties of medium. So that was the first characteristic of the sound. Thank you very much. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. We will continue our chapter number 8. The portion is of the sound. And in a previous lecture we have studied about the characteristic of the sound, and the first characteristic of the sound, pitch, we have done that one. And in my lecture I told you there are the three characteristics of the sound. First was pitch, second quality, and the third one is the loudness. So today we are going to start the second one. Now the heading is characteristics of sound, and today we will go through the second characteristic of the sound. That one is quality or timbre of tone. The second characteristic of sound. The particular characteristic of a sound which enables us to recognize it and assign into its source is called the quality. It means the sound which we hear, we can assign from where the sound is being produced, and we recognize the sound of the person or an instrument. Like when the two persons are talking outside the room, you can recognize this one is the sound of the Jamal and this one is the sound of the Kamal. You can recognize easily. Or in other words, you can have some instruments, you can recognize the sound as well. So this property of the sound through which we can recognize the sound and assign the source of the sound is known as quality or the timbre of the tone. That means the property are characteristic property or characteristic of sound which enables us to recognize the sound and assign its source. This property, this is called quality of a sound. Quality of sound. So dear student, when you get a telephone call, you can recognize the sound of your friend. Known sounds can easily be recognized. One more thing, you know that if the two sounds have the same pitch, same loudness, but even you can recognize, you can differentiate the two sounds, like the sound of the piano and sound of the violin. You may recognize the sound of the man and the sound of the women. You can differentiate them, you can distinguish them. That is known as the quality of the sound. It depends on the shape of waveform. That means this property, quality of sound, depends on waveform. When we talk about the waveform, what do you mean? Let's suppose I'm drawing over here the three waves. Let's suppose these are the three waves. Let's suppose three waves. I'm drawing the three waves now. One wave is like this. And other wave is like this. And the third wave is so you got the three types of the waves on the board. This wave is known as the tuning fork waves, and these waves are known as these waves are the violin waves, and these waves are known as piano waves. As you know that these are the three different forms of the waves. Amplitude of all these waves is the same. Frequency of all these waves is same. They have the same frequency, same amplitude, but even the sound is different from one another. So that means this one is because of the nature of the waves, the form of the waves. They have the three different waves. I have given an example of that one as well. So it is common experience that the note of the same pitch, loudness produced by the different musical can be easily distinguished when one instrument is played. It produces overtones or the harmonies in addition to the fundamental. You may say the different instruments may have the same fundamental quantities, may have the same fundamental frequency, like they have the same frequency, they have the same amplitude, but even the waveform is because of the overtones produced in a sound waves. So different instruments played simultaneously may have the same fundamental, but they differ in the overtones or the harmonics. That's why we can recognize their sounds. That means the pitch and loudness of sound depends on fundamental frequency, whereas the quality of sound depends on overtones or higher harmonics. So we can distinguish with the help of the overtones the sound of the one instrument from the other. For example, when the two instruments are played simultaneously at the same times, even you are not watching, but they may have the same note, same frequency, but even you can recognize this one is the sound of the drum, this one is the sound of the flute, that one is the sound of the piano and others. So that was the fundamental definition of the quality. That was the second characteristic.